Every time I get on this, I'll probably say that, but we back with another banger. Today we're gonna be listening to Dr. Umar. Dr. Umar, yes. I'll
Africanism,
be
glad to
back.
be with you. Shout out to Toronto, Canada. One love. As being African, if Drake identifies full time as being African, despite his Jewish heritage, I don't have a problem with him. So now Kendrick got to do what Dr. Umar did and make that public statement, apologize if in any way I assaulted my Canadian African brothers and sisters, because this is just me going against Drake. It wasn't me going against Black Canada. You feel me?
I feel you.
He needs to do that for the sake of the race, to keep the peace. And I believe it was done to ingratiate Donald Trump to the voters. I do not believe that his life is in jeopardy.
No.
There's always tokens. Barack Obama was president. Kamala Harris was vice president. Clarence Thomas is on the Supreme Court. Don't give me individuals. How did we win? How many?
Fubu, Karkanai.
I'm getting out of here.
What?
Who the fuck wearing Fubu and Karkanai in 2020?
This might be a banger.
Podcast is brought
Let's
to you
go,
by
dude.
Marketer Hire. Hello and welcome to Hustle Over Everything podcast. This is a podcast where we receive stories, tips, and tactics from entrepreneurs who have done it. I'm Alex, the owner of the show, and today we have a special show for you. We have the legend himself, King Consciousness, Dr. Umar. What's up, man? How are you doing?
Right
Man,
now, I'm trying to
Africanism,
find
glad
a
to be
font for my clothing brand, man. Bro, this shit is fucking hard work.
With you, shout out to Toronto, Canada. One love.
Most definitely. So I want to start off getting right into it. What were you doing when you heard that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump?
I believe my mother and I were watching a movie together on the television
The fuck?
when it came through yesterday afternoon, I guess it was. And so immediately, I conducted a political analysis on the situation.
He said immediately.
And my political analysis led me to a couple of early theories on the so-called attempted assassination. A couple of things. Number one, when they tried to assassinate presidents, and although Donald Trump is not in office, he once was. And having ever been in office, you are guaranteed Secret Service protection at a level that supersedes other dignitaries. When they make assassinations, they don't miss. State-sponsored assassinations are extremely well-planned and organized, and they leave nothing to chance. In almost every state-sponsored assassination that this country has carried out, there were always backup shooters. If we look at the good Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his state-sponsored assassination, probably the most well-orchestrated in American history, the primary shooter was a expert marksman from the Memphis Police Department. The backup shooters were Green Berets of the U.S. military. And the backup shooters rarely have knowledge of who the primary shooter is. They're normally under the assumption that they are the primary shooter, because nothing could be left to chance. When we look at the 6 presidential assassination attempts in American history, you have President Abraham Lincoln, which was April of 1865. You have President Garfield, which was July 2nd, I believe, of 1881. You have President McKinley, which was in 1901. And then you have President John F. Kennedy,
Hold up. I'm really trying to do something. Well, I'll let y'all
November 22nd, 1963. And then you have President Ronald Reagan, which took place on May 30th, 1981, I believe. And then you had what happened yesterday, former President Donald Trump on July the 13th of 2023. What is odd about these 6 presidential assassination attempts, 2 of which were unsuccessful, 4 that were successful? 3 of them were assassinated on a Friday, and 3 of them were assassinated or attempted to be assassinated on a Saturday. Nobody was shot on a Sunday. Nobody was shot on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. No one was shot on a Thursday. It was only Friday and Saturday. Donald Trump's attempted assassination was on a Saturday. Is it just a coincidence that President Ronald Reagan's assassination attempt was also on a Saturday? Is it a coincidence that both Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump were neither traditional politicians? Ronald Reagan came over from Hollywood. Donald Trump came over from the business world. Is it also a coincidence that neither man was extremely popular, so to speak, when they were running for president initially, and the assassination attempts endeared them to many people who otherwise would not have supported them? All of the four presidents who were assassinated, 3 of them were assassinated on a Friday.
I know how my story
Lincoln was
ends.
assassinated on a Friday. John F. Kennedy was assassinated on a
No, he
Friday.
wasn't.
William McKinley was assassinated on a Friday. Only President Garfield, July 2nd, 1881, was assassinated on a Saturday, as were the attempts made on Reagan and Trump. Are these coincidences? So what do I believe? I believe that this was not an attempt to take Donald Trump's life. I believe this was an attempt to endear Donald Trump to the American people so that the Republican National Committee and Convention could continue to carry out the martyr narrative that they have been using ever since Donald Trump was charged and convicted of a felony. So they are painting a picture to the American people that suggests the power structure doesn't want Donald Trump in office. And because he's being viewed as a martyr, it is increasing his black vote. It is increasing his white vote. And this latest debacle, if you would, scam,
Democracy.
that I would probably say was also done by the American white power structure to further ingratiate Donald Trump to American voters who otherwise would not be thinking of casting a ballot for him. This was not an assassination attempt, excuse me. This was not an assassination attempt. This was a publicity campaign.
Okay. What's the significance of the Friday and Saturday? What do you think that significance is?
Well, one thing we know that
I know
security
code in the
tends
days,
to be
bro.
laxed on Friday and Saturday. There's less bureaucratic activity on a Friday or Saturday. All of your government workers, mostly outside of essential workers, are home on Friday and Saturday. Basically, you have less eyes, you have less supervision, less surveillance, and less security. So whatever you're carrying it out, it's more effective to be done on Friday and Saturday. Those are the 2 days that a lot of folks, are thinking about something other than their job, than their work. And of course, Sunday is church. And very little takes place on Sunday out of respect for, religion. So Friday and Saturdays are the best days to carry out an assassination. And I would also argue to underscore my position that this was a publicity stunt to garner votes for Donald Trump by the power structure. And when I say power structure, I don't just mean the Republicans, because America is not ran by Democrats and Republicans. America is ran by the National Security Agency. America is ran by the Council on Foreign Relations. America is ran by the Trilateral Commission. America is ran by the Federal Reserve. America is ran by the Bilderbergers, the Rothschilds, the Morgans, the Stanleys. That's who America is run by. The Democrats and Republicans are simply their arms and fingers. They are their feet. But the ultimate decisions are made by the shadow government that includes, but is not limited to, those secret bodies that I just mentioned. Let's go to Barack Obama. When President Barack Obama declared his run for president, and even during his reelection and during his entire campaign of the first term and during his second term as well, his life was threatened multiple times. President Obama received more death threats, I believe, than any president in American history, running and sitting. Not a single attempt on his life. There's no way you're going to convince me that someone who's receiving actual threats on their life doesn't get a single attempt in 2 terms, and Donald Trump gets one. I'm not buying that. This was a stunt, and the power structure's name is written all over it.
What do you think about the 2 people that lost their lives?
Collateral damage. America allowed Pearl Harbor to be bombed. They knew the Japanese were coming, and they let it happen because they needed to justify their involvement in World War II. America any government, not just America, but we're talking about America. If you study the behavior of nations, it becomes necessary to sacrifice some of your own people in order to gain a larger reward. In other words, you might lose the battle on purpose so you can win the war.
No,
so I'm not
said,
surprised that there was only one casualty. America has killed way more of her people than that. Look at all the soldiers who died fighting Al-Qaeda, so to speak. You know, look at all the soldiers who died in Afghanistan and Iraq and Kuwait for oil and drugs and access to international markets. They didn't die for liberty or justice or democracy. They died for power and privilege. You know, so America has a history. All governments are corrupt on the planet, okay? And all of them basically have a history of sacrificing their own lives in order to achieve their selfish ends.
So how do you think America is looking to the international community?
Assassination attempts are not foreign, I don't think, to any country. You know, our brothers and sisters on the African soil, they probably experienced the most assassination attempts per capita because of the general weak governmental structure that exists and the strong oversight and control that France, America, Great Britain, Belgium, Germany, and other countries has on Africa. That's what allows so many assassination attempts to take place on African soil, plus the fact that the ego of the Negro.
They ain't just African. Nigga, Afghanistan, their leaders be dying. Really, everybody in the Middle East. Really, everybody besides the super nations, their leaders be getting.
Doesn't give us enough patience to wait for the next opportunity to run for office. We want people unseated right now, so we kill them in order to replace them. But with that being said, I don't think it's a shock because there hasn't been an attempt since 1981, Ronald Reagan. And I tell you what else is very interesting. The time between the assassination of President McKinley in 1881 and the assassination of President John F. Kennedy was 62 years. The space between JFK's assassination and Trump's assassination attempt was 62 years. I don't think that is a coincidence that almost the same amount of time passed between McKinley and JFK's assassinations and JFK's and Trump fraudulent assassination. And it's been just under 25 years since Ronald Reagan's presidential assassination attempt. So I'm just saying all that to say that there's a structure to this, there's a rhythm to this, there's a system to this, and people who really study political science. I was a political science major. Yeah. Okay, so people really study political science. They'll see that if this was just some crazed person, first of all, if you understand how the Secret Service operates, how thoroughly they canvass and case out a situation. For example, most presidents have, what do we want to call them? Replicas of themselves. There's dummies for every president, right? I think they have about a dozen of them. People who look just like Donald Trump. They give them plastic surgery to look like Donald Trump. They dress them up and they send them into places where they think there's high threats to see if in fact, you know, there is a credible threat taking place at that time. So there's no way any shooter, if the Secret Service did their job, and I'm sure they did because, again, he's a past president, possibly soon to be again. There's no way the Secret Service different canvass that out. There's no way the FBI and CIA didn't do their job. There's no way Homeland Security had a breakdown. There's too many governmental agencies involved in the protection of the President of the United States, especially on domestic soil. Especially on domestic soil. There's no way this could happen if you really understand how thorough the United States government is in carrying out its responsibilities to protect the lives of American presidents. This was done by the power structure, and I believe it was done to ingratiate Donald Trump to the voters. I do not believe that his life is in jeopardy. If we look at Ronald Reagan, after he was shot, there was never again, to my knowledge, an attempt on his life. It was purely a publicity stunt. If they wanted Donald Trump
gone... You think Reagan was a publicity stunt as well?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Why?
Because he didn't die. and they didn't come back to kill him again.
Gotcha.
They don't make mistakes. Malcolm's assassination, King's assassination.
Gotcha.
The U.S. government is responsible for killing the former president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez. They killed Arafat. These are some of their unofficial assassinations. They do not make mistakes. If they want you dead, you die. Take the JFK assassination. The single bullet theory, even though that's the most popular theory of JFK's assassination in history, is completely incorrect. People who were there said that there was more than one shooter. There was more than one shooter because they leave nothing up to chance. If the power structure wanted Donald Trump dead, he'd be dead. He's not going anywhere.
Guys, have you ever tried hiring a social media manager, a Facebook ad manager, or anybody in marketing right now? Right now, the barrier of entry is extremely low. It's hard to find that 1% of people who are actually talented and have the experience to make it easy for you to plug and play in your business. That's where Marketer Hire comes in. Marketer Hire sources and vets the 1% of marketers across the world so you can have the best marketers for your business. They work with people like Netflix, but $1,500 off your first try with a marketer. So you'll be able to see for yourself at a discounted rate. Tell me that doesn't make sense. Tell me it doesn't sound like a great deal. $1,500 off. Yeah.
What's the price?
Hit the link in the description. Go find a marketer for yourself. Go find that social media marketer, TikTok marketer, a Facebook ads marketer, so you can drive more business to your business. All right, I've seen the episode. Let's get back to it. All right, so let's pivot a bit. We're from Toronto, right? Shout out Toronto, shout out to Six.
B2B.
When it comes to the Drake and Kendrick situation, you talked about this a bit on the Breakfast Club, and Drake being called white, essentially. What's your opinion on that?
Well, first of all, as I said to my good brothers DJ Envy and Charlemagne 4 mornings ago, I'm going to have to do some more research, on Drake's political views as well as his racial identity. Being a psychologist, having many friends who are mixed race Africans, having done plenty of work with mixed race Africans, I understand that some of them are in complete denial of their Africanity. I know others are in complete support of their Africanity, and I know that still there are furthers who are not quite comfortable with either identity. So I have to see where Drake stands. I don't know how much his mother raised him with an understanding that you are a black man. I don't know how much his father may have raised him with a strong sense of African consciousness. Obviously, his father procreated with a white woman, so clearly he's not the proudest of black men, but yet and still, he could have tried to raise his son with a strong, black consciousness. So I'm going to do some research and look and see what Drake had to say himself. Some people accuse my good brother Charlemagne of not being honest in some of the things he said about Drake. I believe my brother to be completely honest, but in fairness to Drake, I have to see what he had to say out of his own mouth. Because when I heard some of the lyrics of Kendrick, and keep in mind, I don't follow either rapper closely. I don't really listen to anyone out of New School. Probably I listen to Meek Mill the most out of any modern artist because we're from the same neighborhood. But most of them, I don't follow them. I'm very much an 80s and 90s guy. We're only a few miles away from East Orange, Naughty by Nature, one of my greatest hip-hop rap groups of all time. Tretch, one of my favorite artists. Tupac, my #1 artist. I listen to the old stuff. I don't listen to none of this new stuff. So I don't know much about Drake or Kendrick, but I appreciate, the positive spin that Kendrick has on his music, and I can appreciate the success that Drake has had over time, but racially, where I stand with Drake, I have to do some research and see exactly, what he claims to be. As Envy and Charlemagne said, he's very clear that he's Jewish. And I don't have a problem with him being clear about the fact that his maternal lineage is Jewish. But my question is, are you also as unapologetic about your blackness as you are about your Jewish lineage? And if you're more proud to be a Jew than you are proud to be black, clearly Dr. Umar going to have some issues with you. I don't have a problem with him claiming to be Jewish because that's who he is. But is that what you're leading with? Because if that's what you're leading with, you're clearly not unapologetically African, and I probably will lose respect for you. With that being said, I did think Kendrick was a little hard when I first heard that, because I said we should not be dividing or separating out our mixed race brothers and sisters from the rest of us. I'm a Pan-Africanist, and in the tradition of Pan-Africanism, all of my Pan-Africanist forefathers, they all taught and stood for, as do I, the principle that all African people are of African heritage if they identify with being black full time. We've never discriminated against Africans who had a white mother or a black father, assuming that the other parent was indeed black. There was never an issue for us. I mentioned Bob Marley on The Breakfast Club. I can go to John Brown Russworm, who is probably the first prominent Pan-Africanist in history from Jamaica. He's the black man who started the first newspaper in this country a few miles away over in Manhattan, New York, with Samuel Cornish, called Freedom's Journal, 1827. That's the first black newspaper. He's one of the first black men to get a college degree in this country. He's one of the first Pan-Africanists to repatriate to Liberia, where he died, and he was of mixed race heritage. My number one Philadelphia ancestor, Robert Purvis, who was president of the Philadelphia Underground Railroad in the Anti-Vigilance Society. He's the brother who had the famous painting of Sin Q, the leader of the Amistad Rebellion. He had that done. His father was white. John Brown Russworm, his father was white. Bob Marley, his father was white. Bishop Henry McNeil Turner, the first black man.
Mama was white? That's
to say God was black. He's one of the first elected officials to Georgia State House during Reconstruction. He was called Marcus Garvey before Marcus Garvey, and he died just before Marcus Garvey came to America. His father was white. So I have plenty of heroes. My ancestor, Frederick Douglass, and his half-brother and first cousin, my 4 times great-grandfather, Stephen Henry Bailey, their fathers was white. So I don't come from a history where we practice discrimination or any form of bigotry against mixed race Africans. On the plantation, we was all one. Yeah, the slave master might use the yellow African or use their mixed race children, to serve them in the house. But at the end of the day, we was all NIWGAs to them. You know what I mean? So as long as you identify full time as being African, if Drake identifies full time as being African, despite his Jewish heritage, I don't have a problem with him. But if he has done things such as the blackface, which I did see, which I thought was definitely conduct unbecoming a black man. When you look at that blackface skit that Drake did, it does suggest that he's poking fun at black people and doesn't necessarily see himself as one of us. But as I asked Charlemagne, at what point in his life did he do that? It doesn't excuse him. Wrong is wrong. But if he did that when he was 18 and now he's in his 30s, maybe he's grown from that. He still owes the African race an apology for acting like a fool, but at the same time, I'm not going to outright dismiss him if that was done later in life, because we all have to overcome issues. We all suffer from post-traumatic slavery disease. We all suffer from post-traumatic colonization disorder, and I wouldn't want to hold Drake to a standard that I don't hold anyone else to. But if it is in fact proven, that he's identifies as a Jew and only identifies as a black man when it's convenient, then I would have to say that Kendrick Lamar, was definitely appropriate. And I think that Kendrick Lamar's lyrics and his verbal attacks, on Drake would be without question or without refutation if Drake is guilty. Then I would have to say Kendrick was within his right to expose him the way that he did, Yeah. But I want to see that, because I heard Not Like Us. And so when I'm listening to that, I'm like, wow, is Drake guilty of all these things Kendrick is accusing him of? And if he is, he needs to write the record with his people, meaning African people, not just Canadians and not just North American Africans, but the whole race. As a Pan-African, this is about all of us, not some of us, and Drake needs to clarify that. You know what I mean? So again, for me, the story is not yet closed, and my assessment on the Drake-Kendrick situation requires a little bit more study on my part.
So just a little background. I watched the whole Breakfast Club interview. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, during that segment, that was the only time of the entire interview that there was any sort of confusion.
Okay.
Right? There was confusion from Charlemagne because he didn't really know exactly how to answer your questions, because you did admit, first of all, that you don't listen to neither party very much, and that you don't know much of their history. So us being from Toronto, we know for a fact that Drake 100% is black. And
No. you know he's black.
That
Do
he
you know,
identifies.
does he identify?
No. I know
Okay.
100%.
Because I know he's black.
I know 100% that Drake identifies as black. But he doesn't shy away from his Jewish culture, of course, because that's his mom that raised him. But he definitely 100% identifies as black. And I just want to let you know that, because even in that interview, there was confusion on everyone's party. But
So
I
with the
know.
blackface,
Yeah.
when did he do that?
I believe that he was like 8, 17,
And did
16.
he ever apologize for doing that?
I don't think that he publicly apologized.
Then
no.
he needs to.
Okay.
Because until he does, he's a coon in my book. Don't ever
So
disrespect
I
me.
want to go kind of deeper into that conversation around maybe people that aren't from America being considered black. A conversation that derives from this Kendrick Lamar and Drake beef is that people who aren't American are not black. That's been a conversation.
I've never heard that.
So
I've never
huge.
experienced that.
It's huge. And even so, your Joe Budden interviews, because there was a part 1 and part 2. I'm a Patroni, so I watched both interviews as soon as they came out.
I'm glad I still ain't
You
watched
guys
them. I
spoke a
don't wanna pay
lot.
for them.
You guys spoke about so many things, but the reason why I brought that up is because you went on that platform, and even Joe Budden, he's literally telling people that certain people are not black.
He didn't say that during our interview.
He didn't say that during your interview,
Okay.
but this has been a more recent
because
thing.
I wouldn't have accepted that. Yeah.
One of the people that he was speaking about was Tyla, the new artist from, I believe, South Africa. He said that she's not black. He said Drake's not black. He's just saying that a lot of
Now
different
with
people.
Tyler, and I don't know much about, I just seen something come across my screen. I believe she's a member of the colored community of South Africa.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, because they don't identify as black.
They don't, but I don't think she directly come out and said I'm black, but she didn't.
But she needs to.
I don't
You
think
have
that
to be
she.
unapologetic.
Got you.
You
So
understand?
yeah,
We should not be sitting here
yeah.
wondering if
If you're black,
she's clear, if she identifies. And then the other question I would have for the sister Tyler or for Drake, there should be no questions.
yeah,
It should be so clear where you stand that there should be no questions from anybody.
yeah.
And if there are questions, the fact that I even had to ask the question, even though I don't follow him a lot,
Got you.
means you haven't done enough to make it clear that you're a black man. Because it should be unequivocal. You made it clear how much you're a Jew. That's fine. But guess what? Everybody knows Drake has identified as a Jew. You feel me?
Yeah.
There was no question about that. But there was a little bit of uncertainty about the black side. You guys being from Toronto, you're clear on it, which
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah.
But guess what? The world should be clear on it.
Yeah.
And if the world is not clear on it, then automatically a suspicion I would have as a neutral party. You understand?
Yeah.
As a Pan-Africanist, because I'm no more loyal to a Kendrick being born in America or Drake born in Canada, even if he is mixed race, because I'm a Pan-Africanist.
Yeah.
So all of us are equal. I care as much about the African in Angola as the one in Alabama, the one in Botswana as the one in Birmingham, the one in Toronto as the one in New York. It's no difference to me. One race.
Got you.
But with that being said, it automatically draws a suspicion as to whether or not you're identifying as black, just to make sure you don't alienate your potential customer base.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So if she
100%,
has identified as colored
Yeah.
her whole life, and now I'm saying I'm black
Yeah.
because I want to make sure I sell these records. You see, if Drake is saying I'm Jewish my whole life, but now I better say black
Yeah.
because as popular as I am, if I say I don't identify as black and I'm
Yeah.
only Jewish, I'm going to lose a lot of my fan base. Just like when Barack Obama ran for president of the United States,
Yeah.
he ran as a black man. But if you go through Obama's history and if you look at his books, he very much tried to live his life as a mixed race person as opposed to being black. You know what I mean?
100%.
So my thing with mixed race Africans, again, I don't see them as any different than the rest of us. They do have to make it clear where they stand because there is a population of mixed race Africans who don't want to be called black. They very much identify as mixed race, which is a way of saying I'm a little bit different from y'all and I'm a little bit better from y'all. And I want to make sure I get those crumbs that fall from the table of white privilege whenever I get a chance to do so.
Yeah.
I had this conversation. I was in London. I was speaking at one of the Pan-African conferences. And there was a mixed race sister in there. And I had to explain to her in Manchester, England, that you are African, okay? And that's the only way we want to deal with you. If you want to come to the Pan-African movement as mixed race, and that's how you want to be identified, we have no space for you because this is for African people. We can respect the fact that you got a white mother, but you're black. And you need to also understand your white mother is not invited into this space. We will respect her as your mother, but she got to understand this is a black space. Your daughter could come, but you cannot. And that sister had difficulty swallowing that.
Yeah.
And she would be somebody who couldn't sit at the table, even though she's my sister, because she's confused in terms of her racial identity. She cannot be invited to the table.
So, and to go back into the Drake thing and the whole conversation around people that aren't from America not being black. So I just want to clarify that you disagree with that sentiment.
I completely disagree with it.
Okay.
So
And it ain't about being black, it's about being African, although we use the word black interchangeably. You understand?
Yeah.
Everybody on the planet who is a direct descendant of the continent is black, period. I don't care where you live.
Yo,
I've been to Toronto plenty of times. I've been to Montreal.
What is
I've been
that?
everywhere but Australia.
I'm trying to think of that with the yellow smiley face. It's Watchmen.
Bro, you understand? African is African. One black parent or two. It's no difference with me.
Got you.
And I will say there are Pan-Africanists who are hypocritical. You know, I've been around Pan-Africanists where I could tell that they had some chauvinism against American Africans, or they had some chauvinism against European Africans, or they had some chauvinism against Caribbean Africans. So I know there's hypocrisy within the Pan-African movement.
Yeah.
I've experienced it myself.
Gotcha.
There's Pan-Africanists in the world who don't like the fact that I'm the most prominent Pan-Africanist in the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They don't like it.
Yeah.
And when I'm in their party, I can feel the chauvinism. I can feel the bigotry. They won't speak on it because they get slapped down, you understand? But I can feel the envy. I can feel he's not
God
quite
damn, that's
African
crazy.
because he's a descendant of the enslaved African. You understand?
Gotcha.
So yes, there's bigotry within the Pan-African movement,
Yeah,
but it's
that
the
makes
job
me
of
laugh.
those of us
Yeah.
who are sincere about this to make sure we call it out.
I know.
Thank
how
you for
much-
clearing that up, because during this whole beef, that was the first message that I heard, and I've been invested in it because
But who said that? Now I know you said Joe Budden.
so Joe Budden's
Did
one of
anybody
the
else?
people that have definitely said that, but I'm looking at the conversation that are coming from just average everyday social media users. So
Okay.
I've gone viral a couple times, one on his podcast, one on the podcast that you also reposted, regarding this whole Drake situation. And on his podcast, I got the Kendrick lovers, which means they're Drake haters.
Okay.
A lot of the comments that were being directed at me was, you're from Canada, first of all, so you have no knowledge on what we're really talking about.
Yeah.
And secondly, you're not black. That's what a lot of people
Wow.
are saying.
I've
And
never heard- wow.
so and that goes into hip hop itself. So you have been very outspoken specifically about Marcus Garvey, right?
Honorable Marcus Garvey. Yes.
The honorable Marcus Garvey, and
He's still
he
no
comes from Jamaica.
Yes.
Now hip hop itself, Kool Herc has been credited as pretty much the creator, alongside
He's
with
the
a couple
father of
people,
hip-hop.
the
And
father
he's
of hip hop,
Jamaican.
and he's Jamaican as well. So the same thing that they're using to kind of take away what would be my blackness as somebody who is Jamaican and Canadian, they're trying to use hip hop as kind of a thing to be against those people, which I don't understand, because it's created by somebody that's not from here, right? So the whole conversation around it gave me a little bit of an identity crisis, because I'm like, my whole entire life as a black guy growing up in Toronto, I very much identify with American culture because it's New York is right there. It's so close. So when I come around, I now just start to hear this conversation at 28 years old talking about, wait, like people that aren't black American aren't even black.
I can try it.
It's just, it has me gone for
Yeah,
gone for
I
a
don't
loop.
agree with that. And you know, Kool Herc, who's a friend of mine, you know, he reaches out to me from time to time, nothing but love and respect for the elder. He is the father of hip hop. Now, there were other people present at that time,
Yes.
you know, who were without question,
Yes.
you know, the offspring of Africans who were forcibly brought here, you know, so it wasn't just exclusively a Jamaican creation.
For sure.
You understand? But to your point, what I think you're getting at is that Africans from every culture or from several cultures actually contributed to what we now, you know, consider to be hip hop. To me, the argument is much bigger though. And it's an argument of racial bigotry. And it is an argument of alienation that I think all of us, or many of us, because to my credit, I'm not guilty of this. But as I travel the world, I do see the schisms and the isms. I do see the cultural imperialism and the internal separation that we play against each other.
Yeah.
You know, even in countries, you know, I could think about when I went to Montreal and some of the things I heard about Toronto, you understand?
Yeah.
Or when I'm in Ghana, what I hear about Nigeria, or when I'm in Nigeria, what I hear about South Africa, when I'm in South Africa, what I might hear about Ethiopia, when I'm in Ethiopia, what I might hear about Somalia, you understand?
Yes, yes.
You know, so Even in America, you have it. East Coast, West Coast. We have a whole bunch of isms and schisms. And that's why we as Pan-Africanists, we believe in organization on the racial level. We believe that we are one people. That's all we stand for. So we don't get involved in all of that. Obviously, in America, we have certain...
But I feel like, wouldn't that be like not a shortcut, but I can't think of it right now.
Social, quasi-political movements that seek to weaponize American African identity against other people. But, and I don't...
This nigga Jay-Z like a motherfucker reformed man, bald head ass.
Support them. But in their defense, a very mild defense, I understand where the energy comes from.
Okay.
Because American African people, we have created things such as hip hop that Africans around the world have taken advantage of and have done very well with, and they will turn around and disrespect American African people. Let's take Akon, right? Our brother Akon, who's from Senegal. He's done very well as a hip hop R&B artist. And when he's in Africa discussing American African people, he can speak very disrespectfully about the very people whose culture made you a millionaire. You understand? Yeah. So we have to also recognize that it's not just that American Africans have an issue with Africans from Toronto or Africans from the continent or Africans from the Caribbean. We have been insulted and we have been belittled and we have been degraded by Africans in other places because of our history of being an offspring of enslaved. And for me, it's no shame for me. Yeah. It's a badge of honor because I know what my ancestors did to bring that freedom. And I know that from the mind and the soul of the American African came so much that this world would never have if it wasn't for us. If it wasn't for the enslaved African, there would be no stoplights, there would be no gas masks, there would be no helicopters, there would be no internet, there would be no cell phone. These things came from black folks from the States. So I understand what we gave, but as a Pan-Africanist, I could never allow the bigotry that I still experience from Africans in other places, even being as popular as I am as Dr. Umar, but being a Pan-Africanist, I could never be so hypocritical as to let the psychological injuries that I have sustained from bigoted Africans around the world to manipulate me into weaponizing my identity against them as they would have weaponized their identity against us. At the end of the day, it is Pan-Africanists versus everybody else. So I rise above that bigotry in America. I'll rise above it if it's in Canada. I rise above it if it's in Africa. I rise above it if it's in the Caribbean. And I believe that's one of the reasons why I am so popular, because when people are around me, they feel it and it's genuine. I show no favoritism to nobody. If I'm going to Nigeria, I make it clear. I'm not siding with the Igbo or the Yoruba. You understand? If I'm going to Kenya, I make it clear. I'm not siding with the Maasai or the Kikuyu. Wherever I go, it's African people first. That's what I'm dealing with. There's no Nigerian bone. There's no
Unless you got power, you can. It's a bullshit belief in America. That's like picking neutral when two of your niggas don't like each other. Like, I don't know, bro.
Toronto African bone. There's no Brazilian African bone. We African, and that's all there is to it for me.
Beautiful.
Listen, the more subscribers we have, the better the guests get. So please hit subscribe. Let's get back into the show.
Full. All right, y'all, everybody from Toronto, you guys heard it straight from Dr. Umar. That they not like us. We're not accepted over here. I definitely thank you for clearing that up.
Wait a minute. So you're saying, when Kendrick says they not like us,
he's talking about us. Like literally me. Like me, I'm they.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to do some research. No, see, I thought he was just talking about Drake as an individual.
No.
He's talking about us, like black people that are not American. Like me, my parent.
I didn't look at it like that.
That's what I'm saying though. Like that's the conversation.
I didn't. That's the first time I've heard that.
Yes. Yeah.
But that's damn near probably what it is.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
It's not, they not like us. It's not a virtual signal for Americans to dislike Canadians.
Bro.
But
listen.
Okay.
When he says they not like us.
Hello. Give
wait. We gotta get. Wait.
Let it finish though, fellas.
Yeah. When they say they not like us, that is simply a battle between Kendrick and Drake.
Okay.
That's all it is. It is they not like us. It is simply the same thing as if you're on a basketball court and your team is up. You like, they not with us. They not with us. It's the same thing. Now I get, I get that y'all are Canadian. I can see where, a hit against Drake might be like a personal sting, but we can't get lost in that, because then that goes right back to what Dr. Umar says, right? That letting a rap beef seep deeper into a culture that's already splintered is gonna do far worse damage, right? So when Kendrick went in the studio and said they not like us, I don't want y'all to be out here thinking or put it out there that, that's Drake saying Canada blacks are not blacks. No. It is simply
You
need to understand, really Americans are coming through with that. Like, unequivocally, bro. Like 100%. If you look at, I can show you comments right now on our IG of guys saying, "Oh, you cheesing, fam?" Like literally.
Because that's a funny line from the song.
But I also think two things can be true at the same time. In other words, I believe it can be true that Kendrick, that's not his intent of his message. But at the same time, it can be true that his fan base is using it to push that other message. And so I believe then, for clarity's sake, Kendrick is going to have to clarify that. Because it's one thing to have a beef with another artist, right? It's something else to feed into a cultural narrative that fosters division between brothers and sisters, right? And that would undermine the Pan-Africanist movement.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the first time when the they part, I'm kind of understanding what they're saying. But I'm hoping that what you're saying happens to be the truth. But Kendrick needs to clarify it. Yeah. And he also is going to need to rebuke his fan base for turning this into anything other than a beef between two artists.
Right.
Because we can afford that to undermine the Pan-African unity that we have in the Western Hemisphere.
That's if he identifies as a Pan-Africanist.
It doesn't matter if he identifies as a Pan-Africanist. If he sees himself as a black man,
right?
Why would you not see them as your brothers and sisters as well? Because if you're going to say that, I'm black American, versus American African, you see.
Yeah.
If he says I'm black American and I see myself completely different from black Canadians, then he becomes a weapon of division.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that last part, which is super important if it exists, but Kendrick's never been on record. He's never been somewhere and said, well, I'm black American. I don't know about them blacks over there.
I feel
he
you.
simply got into a beef. He said, oh, you got this song? Well, I got this song. And you got this song? I got this song.
I'm with you.
I'm with this song. So,
but now, though, because the fan base has tried to turn it into something else, you now have to speak to it.
Right.
It's like if somebody tries, let me give you an example. A couple years ago, I beefed with a brother in the conscious community, right?
I know who you're talking about.
And when I went at him, I talked about him being a light-skinned supremacist, and you pale, and you albino, and when I go to Africa, everybody know I'm African because I'm deeply, right?
I remember.
I'm thinking this is just me and him. But guess what? My inbox started getting flooded up with light-skinned Africans. And I'm like, damn, Dr. Umar, you thinking you just going at him? But you offended all these other light-skinned Africans who love you too. You feel me? So guess what I had to do? I had to go public and make it clear that was just me in the moment, trying to get back at this one brother that as a Pan-Africanist, I do not do light-skin supremacy. I do not do dark-skin supremacy. I was simply coming at him because he was coming at me. Which could be the same as Drake and Kendrick. So now Kendrick got to do what...
He need to start his own YouTube. But that's the end of the video. Like, comment, subscribe. Fuck with me.